Shooting outside in the cold, backups, and measuring flash, old school. Hey everyone, welcome to Keep Shooting Monday number 121. My name is Greg Cazillo from Cazillo.com. Coming up in the show, I had someone ask a really great question about how to measure flash when you're not shooting digital, which means you're shooting film. So I'll be going over that very soon towards the end of the show. Also coming up is some cold weather shooting tips. I'll be going over that very soon. A little bit of news first. Adobe CC is the little app that you install that basically controls the installation of Photoshop and Lightroom and all the other Adobe CC apps. It also allows you to sync data in between your computer and Adobe's cloud, and they're all their devices. So it does a lot of things. It also allows you to pull down stock photos and fonts and all kinds of stuff that'll allow you to share your photos on Behance. So there's a lot of really cool stuff that this application does. Well, one of the things that it does now in version 3.5.0.206 on the Mac is it deletes the alphabetically first directory in the Mac's hard drive root folder. That's something that is not cool. Basically what happens when you install that, there's a couple of videos out there that show you what happens. It deletes that directory. There's a lot of actually online backup users of a single application called Backblaze when they use that online backup service, because that folder, they had actually a hidden folder. Backblaze would create a hidden folder in there. That folder would get deleted and canned, and so that is not good. As soon as you would sign in after the installation or update of the new version, it would delete that. It'd be gone. It's not added to the trash, so as far as I know, you cannot restore it. So that's obviously an issue. Another piece of news that I noticed is another application called Copy, also called CUDA Drive, are no longer. They're shutting down on the 1st of May 2016. Both of these instances of this copy service being shut down, and also Adobe CC app having issues, they both reinforce the need to have local backups of your data. One thing to remember is there isn't any magical computer in the sky. There really is no such thing as a cloud computer. It's just a term for someone else's computer. So you need to remember that. Since it's someone else's computer, since someone else owns that computer, the hardware, the software, the service, all of that stuff, that means they can shut it down whenever they want. This service Copy didn't have to give their users any kind of notice at all. They could have just shut it down whenever, today, done, gone, disappear. That means you have no backup. If it happens that then your hard drive crashes at the same time, lightning strikes, something happens, then you're basically SOL. Stay away from only having an online service. You need to be using more than one. Need to be having a local backup, and it's okay to use that in addition, but you got to have at least one local backup. So I thought I would go over some backup tips. First one, if you're on a Mac, use Time Machine. If you're on a PC, use the Windows backup. Both of them work just fine. There's nothing wrong with them. They're free, they're included, they're built in, so use them. If you do want something better, I use an application called Retrospect. It's a great application. I've been using it for probably close to 12 or 15 years. Great application. I've been using it since like version 4. It's now on version 10. Hasn't changed a lot. It does have a little bit of a learning curve, but once you have it figured out, it runs. It works great. Has a really great function where it actually double checks to make sure all the files are correct, byte by byte, to make sure that there's no issues after they're copied. So that's great. It's a great application overall. And it's only, I think it's like $100 or $130 for the professional version, which is all that most people need for just a single desktop license. Copy all your photos to at least one additional drive. Now, I've actually had people ask me and say, well, I store my photos on an external hard drive. That means they're backed up, right? No, it means you still only have one copy. You need to be making more than one copy. So if you're storing photos on an external hard drive, great. Like if you have an iMac or you have a MacBook or you have a laptop and you're storing your photos on an external hard drive, it's not an issue. But you need to have a second copy of everything. You need to have a second external hard drive in order to store your photos on it and have a backup. All right. If you're anal like me, then you're going to set up 3 local copies of everything, which I have. So I have a working copy, then I have 2 more two more drives that are backups here locally. Then I have a 4th off-site backup for everything, which I take home from the studio. Has the 3 copies, and the 4th copy is at home, and so I'll swap them out, and then I'm sure to not lose anything. You could make that 4th copy an online backup. Then if that service did shut down, something goes on, wouldn't be an issue. No harm, no foul. You have your local backup. It's not a problem. So, then it's not as big of a deal. I actually recommend for your backups or any kind of an external storage, like I said, if you have an iMac or if you have even the new Mac Pro cylindrical machines, all the machines out there on the Macs require you to have external storage, which I'm not a fan of. That's why I stick with my PCs for my primary workstations, or one of the reasons why I stick with my PCs for my primary workstations. Anyway, I recommend this guy, which is a mobile store from Sans Digital. Basically what it does is allows you to put 4 hard drives inside of it. It's just a lot more convenient to buy bare drives to be able to upgrade them, or if one fails, it's not as expensive. Overall, it's a better solution rather than buying 2, 3, 4 external hard drives. You got to run power to them all, and then you got to have 4 USB ports. That means you might need a hub. So there's all those additional issues. So this is a much cleaner and easier solution to use as one of these mobile store units. If the mobile store unit is $149, 4 terabyte drives right now are $145 each. I do recommend the Western Digitals. Stay away from Seagate. They've actually had a lot of reliability issues over the last few years, and there's also a class action lawsuit against them right now. So do not buy Seagate drives to store your photos on. And if you currently have Seagate drives, I would recommend getting another one too, just in case, another backup, just in case, because there's a high failure rate on Seagate drives. Don't waste your time burning the CD or DVD. You just spend hours and hours doing that. It's just totally not worth it. And CDs and DVDs are not meant for long-term storage. They're not going to last as long as a hard drive will. Your best price per gigabyte storage is for hard drives. That's the best way to go. One more thing, portable flash storage like USB drives, that kind of thing, USB flash drives, those are not meant for permanent long-term storage. Same with the memory cards, the SD cards or compact flash cards that you put in your camera. They're really not meant for long-term storage. They're not stable enough for long-term storage. So stay away from those for your backups. So hopefully those are a couple of backup tips. If you have any tips for anyone, please let us know. I'll gladly mention them next week's show, or retweet or comment, all that good stuff. So please mention any of them, or if you've had any issues with your backups, if you have a disaster that you'd like to talk about to help warn people, please let me know. I'd love to talk about some of those on next week's show. So I mentioned cold weather shooting. Last few days, we've actually had single-degree temperatures here in the northeast of the United States, and it has been super cold. Luckily, I haven't had to be outside a whole lot, which is a good thing. But if you are shooting, if you do need to be outside shooting, there's some things you need to do to make sure you're taking care of yourself. Obviously, you need to stay warm, but also your equipment. The number one thing is take your battery. Have a couple different batteries. That's the first thing that's going to go is the battery. It's not going to last as long. It's going to die. You need to keep it warm. So take a couple of batteries, take 2 or 3 batteries, have some spare ones inside of a shirt pocket or next to your body on an inside pocket, so that they will stay warmer. Your body heat will keep them warmer, and they'll last longer that way. Being out in the cold, they're just going to die super, super quick. If you also need to protect your camera from moisture, that moisture will freeze up on the camera to make it harder to use. I mean, cameras today are very weather resistant. I shouldn't say weatherproof. I almost said that. They're very weather resistant. Even the lower end bodies are very weather tight and weather sealed, keeping water and that kind of thing out. But it's still possible that it could get frozen up. So if you're worried about that, if you're going to be shooting in any kind of ice or snow or anything like that, your hands are going to be keeping the camera a little bit warm. So it's possible that some of that water could, or some of that snow could get in there and then melt and then freeze and melt and freeze, and so it could lock up the camera or the lens. So be cognizant of that. Whenever possible, put the camera inside of, if you have an extra large coat, slip it inside of your extra large coat so your body can keep it warm for a little bit longer time. If that's not an option, like me, coats are hard enough for me to find, let alone ones that are too big for me to put a camera inside. So I recommend the Think Tank Photo Hydrophobia series. They keep weather off of your camera. Rain, I've used them in the driving rain and the snow. Had no issues. Everything has lasted just great, and love those things. Highly, highly recommended. Here's a link over to the Think Tank site. By the way, if you do head over to Think Tank, you need to purchase anything from Think Tank, you can get a free gift by using my link first, and it'll be up to about $50. So you can get an extra little bag, maybe an extra little belt pack, which I talked about last week of the belt pack systems. So always nice to have an extra little gift. Maybe you need an extra little Pixel Pocket Rocket. Could be all kinds of stuff. So head over there and you can get a free gift when you order directly from Think Tank Photo. I think that is it for the news and stuff I'm going to talk about. So let's go over using flash old school. Valentin asks, how do I know the flash power needed shooting film? Can't check the image, obviously. Valentin, great question. That means you need one of these, which is called a light meter. Light meters, especially this one, can typically measure ambient light as well as flash. This one has a bulb setting, allows you to just measure the all the light in the room or in the area outside, whatever. And also it has a spot meter thing built in. Sekonic still makes these, and they're very popular. Sekonic is a great brand. I believe it's actually owned by Manfrotto. Don't quote me on that. I need to check on that. Anyway, great brand. Love their light meters. I've had this one since college, and actually I've taken care of it just to be sure. I actually take the battery out of it because I don't use it super often. So I take the battery out of it to be sure that it does not get destroyed by a battery that goes, you know what I mean? So any of your equipment that you don't use often, make sure you take the batteries out of. So a little bit about the setup. I have my 2 background lights set up here. Just over here, I would have my softbox. Obviously, we're shooting a high key kind of a portrait. Then just above the camera, which is the proper place to put it, or next to the camera, is my fill light on an umbrella, so you can see that. So I have my strobe set up on a wireless trigger, so I can fire those. The first thing you need to do is measure your background. Now, typically I would turn off all of my strobes to measure them one by one, and then turn them back on to measure them again. Now, in this situation, you need to be able to see me for video purposes, so I'm going to at least leave that light on, but I am going to turn this one off. and measure it so that you can see what's going on. So it's turned off right now. It's not going to fire when I pop that, and then you'll still we'll turn it on in a minute to be able to measure that. So first, let's measure our background. And actually, we had someone ask a couple of weeks ago about backgrounds and shooting and how to do high key. So this is another answer for that high key setup. So have my light meter set up and my background strobe set, and so I am going to measure them. That one's at 16.7 and about the same height here. That one is also at 16.7. Maybe that one's just a little bit hotter, and that's okay. So we just get an average across the entire image. Now for something like this, it would be just a headshot or maybe a 3/4 shot. But if we were doing a full length, obviously, then we would need to worry about the floor also. But in this particular situation, I'm not going to super worry about that. So take the light meter, point it towards the strobe to measure the amount of light that's coming into it. Then you get an idea of how to set your camera, and that's how you do it with film. So first I would get my background measured, adjust my lights so that they're as even as possible across the entire background, or at least across the area that I'm capturing. Obviously, that's what matters. You know, we don't care about the light that's way up here in these corners if we're only photographing and only using this tiny little bit. So that's what's really going to matter. Do your best to stay out of the way of the strobe. Maybe kneel down so that and hold it over your head, something like that. Make sure you're not standing in between the light meter and yourself, and so that'll give you a good tip. Now, putting my subject in front of those strobes in the background. And so I'm going to take a meter reading here, just measuring my fill light. That's, like I said, right above the camera. That's at 5.6.5. Maybe we could increase that just a little bit. But let's turn on our main light here and see where it's at. So we're going to point it and get an approximate spot. It's at f8, so that's good. Maybe my background lights are just a little bit hot at f16, because we typically want, for a high key setup, we want it to be about a stop over, maybe stop and a half over. So let's back down my background lights a little bit by a half a stop. Now I use white lightning strobes, which give me infinite variability, which is really nice. I think I turned out the wrong way. Gives me infinite variability on my background or on my lights, so I can just adjust it by a tiny little bit, like a third of a stop or a tenth of a stop if I wanted to. And the other nice thing about this is that the meter also gives me tenths of a stop increments. So let's see where I'm at now, closing my eyes when I do that. 16.2, that's better. So 16.3, 16.2, that's good. So that's nice and even, which is what I want it to be. That one was 11.9, so that gives me a nice even amount of light right behind the person where they would be sitting for their portrait. And so let's go back, remeasure our main light, which I probably need to turn on first. What do you think? Let's double check that again. There we go. So let's pump that one up. That's coming in at 5. There's an 8, F8. First one was 5.6.8. This one, 5.69. So it's all within a tenth of a stop. You're not going to notice that in your image, whether you're shooting, especially if you're shooting film, and very unlikely if you are shooting digital. So I think that is all that I wanted to talk about with regards to this. If you did have any additional questions, I would love to answer them, whether it's about the high key setup, whether it's about the studio setup, anything. I'd love to answer any of those questions. Thanks, guys. Keep shooting. Ready? Here we go. We're going outside. It's going to be cold. I think it's like 20 degrees outside right now. Oh yeah, it's cold out. It's definitely kind of cold out. And as you see, I have no coat on. It's kind of cold out. It's definitely snowing. People are probably looking out the windows, saying, "What's this crazy idiot doing now?" But that's okay. Check, check. Check my shot. Yes, it's snowing. And yes, I'm standing outside in it. Let's see, where do I want to be? That's probably good. Now I gotta remember what I was gonna say. Man, is it cold? The hell was I gonna say? Oh, yeah. Shooting in the cold. Nope, that was part of it. Let's see, shooting in the cold, backups, and measuring flash, old school. Measuring flash. There's a bird over there. Shooting in the cold, measuring flash, shooting in the cold, backups, and shooting in the cold, measuring, shooting in the cold, backups, and measuring flash, old school. Shooting, what was it? Oh, shooting outside in the cold, backups, and measuring flash, old school. Oh, it's cold. Shooting outside in the cold, backups, and measuring flash, old school. All right, couple more. Shooting outside in the cold, backups. I'm forgetting my lines now. Shooting outside in the cold, backups, and measuring flash, old school. Shooting outside in the cold, backups, and shooting outside in the cold, backups, and measuring flash, old school. Hope you enjoyed it. I'm going back inside.